What's up, art kids? Sarah Lynn here. I hope you're all having an awesome week. Today is my tutorial day. Woohoo! And if I'm lucky, this was uploaded on a Tuesday so that I can call it Tutorial Tuesday. So this is gonna look a little different from my usual vlogs. I'm up in a corner instead of on the full screen. Basically, I had some people request that, I show them how I go about making my figures and anatomy when it comes to my cartoons and characters and design. To start off, I'm going to explain a little bit first about the program I'm using. So sorry if you've already seen this program, you already know how to use it. That's awesome, that's great. But I use a program called Mischief for this type of stuff just because it's very quick, it's clean, easy to use, and it's got an infinite canvas, which is super, super cool. We have a new layer. And I'm going to name this layer Sketch Layer. You can name it whatever you like, however to signify, but basically what a sketch layer is for my drawings is it's a very rough, loose, non-thought out sketch of what it is I'm going to draw, or some direction of where I'm wanting to go with my drawings. So for example, I'm going to pull some reference photos and I'm just going to kind of sketch some figures based off of that, and then we'll pick the best one and draw the line art from there. There's a whole little process to go along with this. References, super important. I'm going to pull in a couple reference images. For human anatomy, no one can picture the human body just off the top of their head. You may think you have a perception of what the human body looks like, but it's most likely wrong. There are things and places that, unless you've done this for years and years and years, you may not even get close to being perfect. So I have my little ballerina up here in the corner. So I'm going to name this layer Reference Layer. And I like to name my layers. I highly recommend to name your layers just because when you get 30 layers into a detailed illustration and you have one thing go wrong in one layer and you don't know what layer it's in, it helps so much to know what is on each layer, So that's just a helpful tip from Sarah. I like to start off with a very light color, like a bright blue. Sometimes I'll use a bright red. If I have two different characters in a scene, I'll have one character be blue, one character be red, the third tertiary character being green, whatever. That way, I can tell where each body, limb, piece, part, everything is, so it doesn't get confusing too fast. So we're starting off with our sketching, and she's looking off into the left, so we're gonna kind of, rough out just a nice circle here. We're gonna kind of make a nice little figure that aims towards the left. That's her chin there. I like to go at about maybe half of a circle's width. I'm being very loose with this, so let me just really quick. Alright, so we kind of have this little base of a head, and we're gonna draw just some line work for now. And these lines are just sort of guides as to where her body is going. If I can even draw those straight. So her body kind of ends, just about there. We're going to draw the pelvic line. And we're going to kind of add the shapes onto it. So this kind of just gives a direction when you draw with these very, very loose shapes. Now we're going to kind of add the direction of where her arms are. I like to signify shoulders with a circle, similar to how I did a circle for her head, just to kind of show depth. So one circle might look a little bigger than the other, and that's going to give that proportion of this shoulder is closer to you, the viewer, than it is to this shoulder back here. I don't even know if you can see me. I can't tell what I look like right now. I probably look like a hot mess. Who knows? Let's draw. So we kind of have this smaller circle in the background. And I know it's kind of overlaying over top of this shape right here, but what that does is it kind of lets me see what's in the background, what's in the foreground. So I know this piece right here is going to be up front. Then we're going to draw some connecting lines. Kind of looks like that. And the forearm looks a little longer than what this arm does, the bicep does, just because her arm is technically outwards versus just to the side. So sorry if I say a lot when I'm having to draw and think and talk at the same time. It gets really confusing. So pardon me. So there's her hand. I'm going to. And of course, this here is going to be kind of more on the realistic side when I, start getting into the full-on sketching and everything like that. But when it comes down to it, you start off learning real anatomy so that your cartoon anatomy becomes better. A lot of people say, oh, well, my character looks like this because it's my style. That's great, but there's certain things on human anatomy that you have to take into account so that way your actual cartoon anatomy looks even better. My cartoons looked very, very scrawny and tight and just looked really disjointed when I first started drawing cartoons, and it really frustrated me, and I didn't know why my characters didn't look good. And it wasn't until I started drawing anatomy in the real way that my cartoons started to get even better. So it just kind of goes hand in hand, and it can only help to use from real resources and things like that. These images came from a website. I'll leave a link in the description here, and it's going to be a link to a site which would help for any upcoming artists who are wanting to get into the character design field. And basically what it is it's no different than if you were sitting in a class staring at a model, except of course it's 2D and not 3D. So, take with it what you will and learn from it. It's really, really handy sources. So I kind of have her arms in this sort of little position here. I'm going to kind of draw some lines of motion just to show what her implied motion is, because you can tell her arm is doing that nice little curve bit, so I kind of want to show a flow of bend there. I'm going to kind of beef out her back a little bit because she does have some really firm muscle from what it looks like. And then I'm going to give her a little bit of a hip there that I was missing. So you can kind of see it's slowly coming together. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. I'm going to zoom out. And I'm going to place where her legs are. And starting at these hip sockets that you see right here. So if I were to draw it as if it was an empty hole, kind of like a Barbie doll, if you were to take the legs off, think of what those sockets look like. That's what you're basically drawing here. So we have her pelvic bone, and then her other socket kind of looks like that, it looks like. So she has all her weight on this left leg. Our view is the right leg, but it's on her body, it's the left leg. So we're going to kind of make that one the straightest. So we're going to kind of just, once again, scroll down a little bit to fit her entire body on there. Now, weight proportioning is super, super difficult, and it's something you kind of have to get the hang of. When you draw your lines, you're showing implied motion. But when you add the muscle on top of it, that's what gives it weight. So that way your character doesn't look like she's just floating off into space, which that would be great if she was a fairy or something like that. You can add your wings on her, make her a little butterfly, whatever, and she'd be floating around happy in the breeze. But for this sake, I'm wanting to draw the actual ballerina. And so I want to have a nice weight proportion. So her foot is going to be very, very flat on the ground. And this line kind of goes inwards. It doesn't just stand out here. I'm not drawing her right out here. Otherwise, she would look off. You know what I mean? It would look like she wasn't really on her foot, or maybe she was about to take a step on the other foot. But right now, she's got all her weight on that back leg. So we're going to draw a nice flat line for her foot. Have it kind of go here. And her foot is turned outward slightly. So that outward motion is what's giving her balance, and her hips have to counteract that in order to hold her up and not tumble over or anything like that. Ballerinas have some of the most interesting anatomy to draw, so I'm kind of glad I found a good ballerina picture to use. So I'm kind of adding in a block here of just a basic leg shape. You can kind of see where the legs curve, and there's her knee is a little higher up than that. It's probably up to here. So we'll fix this. So you can kind of see, and again, very rough sketching. I'm not sitting there pressing Control Z a million times. I'm just kind of, you know, letting the roughness be rough because it's going to be a very rough sketch. So you can kind of see how, you know, her position is kind of based off of where that foot is. So, alright. Stick that back out a little bit more. Alrighty, so now this foot, we don't have to worry about that quite as much because it's just kind of floating in the air. And it's got this nice, her upper quad, or her upper thigh, a quad muscle is that muscle, that giant band of muscles that are up on the upper thigh, is what's holding up that leg. And her hamstrings, which are the back of the thigh, are very, very straight. So I have to show how muscles lay out here. I'll show you, I'm kind of sketching out so you can see where the muscles lie out. You have your knee here. I'm going to draw it as a little cube. And the muscles sort of wrap around and around. You see what I mean? So it kind of makes, if you tilt your head to the side, it kind of almost looks like a little mustache, so to speak. But basically what it is your muscles curve and then curve back in, and they wrap around themselves, and that's what makes the tension for bones to move. So you have these nice figures that come from it. So, I'm going to thicken up that thigh a little bit, and then her knee kind of goes inward. There's her knee. It's nice and locked into place. She has her leg very, very tense. She has this nice thick calf muscle, and then it kind of curves in. So, and again, we're just kind of rough sketching here. So it's going to be very, very loose, very, very, it's almost going to look very, very alien and foreign and not proper in any way, shape, or form. It's not going to look like any sort of finished art, but it's a start, you know what I mean? So, there's that. I'm actually going to scale down her legs a little bit because her legs came out just a touch. Okay, let's do that. Let's tilt it inwards like this. There we go. Maybe elongate it just the smallest bit there. Ah. So there you go. It's kind of on point. I'm funny. I'm sorry. Forgive me. So we're just gonna kind of, her leg is just basically straight down. You know, these lines and the little arrows that I'm showing are basically showing force of gravity in a proper sense. So you kind of get an eye for where gravity is pushing down on her body. And her chest is up. Put in her chest a little bit. She doesn't have a whole lot of like boobage or anything like that because her dress is fairly tight and the muscles are very tense. Let's see. Pop that hip out a little bit more. There we go. See, it's kind of coming together. Then we're going to fill in the blocks of her arms to kind of match along. We got this nice little chunky deltoid there. Then we're going to add the tricep, which is down there, the bicep, which is up top here. I'm kind of drawing in the lines of where the muscles are so you can kind of see. And her forearm has this nice little curve. And it almost makes it look like her arm is really bendy, but that's just her positioning. And ballerinas, both male and female ballerinas, all pay really good attention to their lines. And their focus is making everything look less stiff and more flowy and curvy. Their legs are stiff and poised and angled, whereas their arms are doing very fluid motions. So it really, really looks nice. Her forearm kind of curves in there, follows along with the natural motion of her wrist. You have a hand. She has curved fingers. I'm just going to kind of doodle in the rest there just a little to save time. That other little thing. It almost looks like she's doing like a rock on. Works for me. I'm good with that. So you can kind of see, you know, just a rough, very rough sort of idea as to what the arm is supposed to look like. I'm going to scale it down just a touch for proportional reasons. Raise it up a little. So you can kind of see how I'm working, you know, And every now and then, you know, when you draw out the muscles, you might see that it's just a little off, so tweak it a little bit using the transforming tools. That's what they're there for, is to kind of help your proportions. It's okay if the lines don't meet up or anything. Like, I could have completely, you know, taken this arm, chopped it off, stuck it up over here if I thought the proportion looked correct. And it's okay if this little bottom piece is here. That's fine. It's not gonna, no one's gonna kill you. You know what I mean? Her bicep, or I'm sorry, her deltoid, which that's that big, thick shoulder muscle that's on the human body, kind of does stick out a little further than her neck though. So I'm gonna kind of beef that up a little bit. Ballerinas are very, very muscular, as I have noticed. Kind of looks good. Her hand is actually a little lower than what I'm seeing. So I'm going to take this portion of her arm, I'm going to shrink it down just a touch, and bring it down, I think. Yeah, that looks better. Much better. I like it. Awesome. Cool. So that's kind of a good start on that arm. Let's go over here. We're going to kind of add the tubes of this arm. We're just going to kind of do some rough sketch. And it always helps to think of the human body. When I'm drawing this stuff, in my brain, sorry, forgot to add her muscle there. In my brain, I picture everything as tubes. So, you know, you have your hip, triangle, you know, little secular piece there. So pretend this is like her hips or something like that. And you have your line of where the leg is supposed to go. That leg, I'm picturing it as this, you know, as a sort of cylinder base. So if I was to, you know, take all this off here, it almost looks like those little joint dolls you see at the store, or like the art stores where you can sit there and bend and pose your figures. But basically it's just, you know, a cylinder. And it just kind of tapers inward a little bit when you get to the knee, and then outward. And I think of all limbs, like arms and legs and neck, as these cylinders, and it helps a lot with, you know, placements and things like that. So we'll keep that up there for reference so you can kind of see. Then we're going to go with this hand, which will make her do another rock on, just because I think it'd be cool. Hardcore ballerina, how about that? All right, so we kind of have our very, very rough anatomical study of this ballerina here. We can kind of see where her muscles lie. We can kind of see where, you know, the shapes are going and things like that, the true anatomy of it. Here's where I was saying how, you know, you have your tube of a neck, you know, it kind of leads into the head there. So you can kind of see where everything is placed and beefed out. I do kind of want to tilt her head back though for this image. So give me just a second. Let's scoop this back here just to make it a little cleaner, because her head is nice and pulled back and tight. I'm like over here doing all these. I'm always scared that I'm gonna make stupid faces when I draw this stuff, because I tend to make ugly faces when I'm drawing. I don't know if I'm the only one. I've heard that other artists do it too. So, you know, if you make faces when you're drawing emotions and things, it's completely normal. You'll get used to it. We started off with a very rough line sketch, then we kind of added muscle on top of our skeleton, and we added these shapes, and, you know, just kind of built up from a very skeletal layer to a thickened out, close to final sketch. And it looked really rough at first, didn't it? And then all of a sudden it kind of started growing. So learn from your mistakes. That's why I like doing these sketch layers, just because I make a crud ton of mistakes, and in the end I end up with a really nice, decent sketch. It's super, super important to not stress about every little minor detail, like, you know, whether or not this line is supposed to go here, or if it looks messy, or if it looks grungy, or whatever. Be comfortable with what you draw, and take the time to do the practice. It always helps. And then, you know, if we were to go into the line work, that's where you would just take a darker color, go over top of your work, and then you would just kind of block in where everything is, but to a more detailed extent. So you can kind of see I already know where I'm going to draw. It's just a matter of actually drawing it out. So there's where her ballet dress starts out, and then it kind of fluffs out to here, and it goes out here, you know? And I can draw in her deltoid, her bicep, lead up. I'm not going to stress about the cleanliness of my lines just for the sake of time. So there's her face. Sorry, moment of silence there. Draw her nice pretty little bun there on top. Strong muscular motions. This arm is curvier than this arm is, and the reason being is because her arm is closer, and what happens when you pull that arm in, you get a flex and you get this bulge of muscle, and this extends. Whereas when you straighten out this part flexes and this part stretches, so it doesn't look as big. But basically that's kind of the idea, is to make things bend, pull, stretch, flex, all that stuff. It all kind of comes in with the practice of it all. So, you know, and so we finish out our little doodad here, keep sketching along. Just very rough sketch. So now I kind of have this minus the hands, so I don't want to waste time right now. So if I were to delete that first layer, we kind of have a ballerina here, and you can see how it's a very quick process, very fast. Mind you, this sketch of course is just a really rough sketch, but it looks a lot like, you know, the ballerina we started out with. So I do notice something I did mess up here. There we go. Now she kind of has some ribs, which helps. Women tend to have more of an hourglass figure, regardless of how curvy or how skinny or, you know, what shape. Women just tend to have this very hourglass, you know, there's their chest, there's their hip, center point of balance, you know, that kind of a shape. Men tend to have more of the blocked out, broad shoulder, and then smaller angled waist, because they don't have to worry about, you know, childbirthing hips or anything like that. So it kind of, you know, shows, and you can kind of see in the image where those triangles lie. And, you know, their center of gravity for men is a lot lower than where the women's is. The women's would be like right up here again. And then from there, I can clean up and get even straighter lines, more, you know, firm lines to eventually make stuff kind of like this. You know, this is a piece that I did very recently. That's just kind of myself. And learning how to do these lines and shapes eventually leads up to stuff like that. So it's super handy. But yeah, that's kind of how I start off my rough sketching and my line works and things like that. You can kind of see where it all came from. But I think that's about all the time we have for now. I might do another pose in my next video, or I might just focus on hands and feet. This is a lot of fun. I hope you guys like this. Comment, let me know what you think. I think this is a really, really fun project. I would like to do a lot more of these tutorials. I think this is kind of more of what I'm about, is teaching and things like that. So yeah, that's about it. Anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and stay creative. Y'all have a good one. Bye-bye!